Hello and welcome to Friday Live. How you doing, everybody? I am Amanda Farmer, your host here today for Friday Live, going out to the Your Strata Property Facebook page and also out to LinkedIn. How are you all doing out there in Strata land? And what a land it is at the moment. We are in, I calculated, our 7th week of lockdown in the Greater Sydney area and other parts of the country joining in with us. Our lockdown is also now extending to our regions. So we've had a lot on our plate. I don't have to tell you that. You guys have been under the pump as strata managers, as committee members, as building managers, those who are serving our people at home. More people at home than ever before. And unfortunately, it's looking like we don't have too much light at the end of the tunnel. But definitely today, Friday Live, this is your light for the week, for the fortnight, perhaps. Perhaps you joined us last 2 weeks ago when I was chatting to Chris Duggan, the president of Strata Community Association New South Wales. Lots of you here tuning in for that live. The replay is still here on the page if you want to go and check that out. And you're coming on in and saying hello to me. I love that. How you going? Carol saying she enjoyed last week's session. Thank you. Now, Carol, I assume you're talking about our Women in Strata live event that we held over on Zoom webinar, an afternoon with Bryony Benjamin and Jamila Rizvi. We had well over 350 people in Strata online for that event, enjoying our free event packs that we were able to send out to people around Sydney, Greater Sydney, to enjoy some cheese and wine with us last Friday afternoon. It was so much fun, and it was really good to see so many familiar names and some faces. We did have cameras on Zoom there for that event. Still recovering. I do actually have a replay for anybody who was not able to make it. Those of you who were there said you were enjoying it so much that you'd love to watch it again, to share it with your daughters, with your sisters, with your family members. And Rochelle, who is here helping me out in the background, is going to pop that replay link into the comments here so you can go and check out all the fun that we had last Friday at our Women in Strata online event. Some more hellos coming on through. David saying hi from Neutral Bay. How you doing, David? Hi, Amanda Deepak from Elizabeth Bay. Good to see you. Savia is here. Carol is saying she's in Piermont. Great. And Savia is saying, yes, some great sessions in the last couple of weeks. And yet again today. Yes, we do have a special guest here for you today. He is waiting in the wings, and I'm going to bring him on very shortly. I also have another online event that I want to tell you about that is happening next Tuesday evening. So much happening online. I hope those of you who are in lockdown and not able to get out and about and do your usual socializing and your usual face-to-face education are tuning in to tapping into these virtual events and making sure that you're staying connected. So another one for you next Tuesday evening. I am going to be a guest expert for somebody else's event. I am going to tell you how you can tune in for that one. I'd love to see you guys there. Lots more of you coming in and saying hi. I just want to acknowledge you. Emiliana from Chester Hill saying that she enjoyed Women in Strata as well as the accompanying wine and cheese. Yes, I continued to enjoy that wine throughout the weekend. Patricia is joining in. Hi, Patricia. Enver is here from Ultimo. How you doing? And David is saying these sessions are so useful. I am so glad you think so. Thank you, David. All right. Now, where are we at with the public health orders in New South Wales? Now, that is where my focus is as a New South Wales resident and strata lawyer. I know that we have other lockdowns happening around the country, Queensland, Victoria. But today I wanted to just give you a quick update on where our health orders are at in New South Wales. And it is a quick update because, as far as I'm aware, there is no relevant change for Strata, for our residents in Strata, not since a couple of weeks ago when I was chatting to Chris Duggan, as I mentioned earlier. And we did produce that chat as a podcast episode as well, podcast episode number 273. Rochelle will put the link in here for you. Chris and I at that time were debating what the two-worker rule means. It was a very urgent amendment to our public health orders, allowing now two workers to be on residential premises doing particular types of work, prescribed work, alterations and additions to property, cleaning property. What did it mean? Two workers indoors or five workers outdoors? And Chris and I were asking, what does that mean for our common property? Does that mean only two workers on the common property, even in a very large building? That's going to be particularly difficult for our buildings to manage. No change, no clarity, as Chris and I were hoping when we were talking 2 weeks ago. There is a little bit more direction on the New South Wales government website, or I'm not sure that it's direction. There's some more words on the New South Wales government website, and I have a link here for you, cleaning and work directions. And the words on the New South Wales government website are this: residents and workers in residential apartment buildings seeking to arrange access to perform this type of prescribed work. So that's renovations, alterations, additions, repairs, maintenance, cleaning work. Residents and workers wanting to do that work are strongly encouraged to contact their owner's corporation or strata manager to check any additional rules which may apply to a particular residential apartment building for access. That's a little bit unhelpful because, once again, it puts the ball back in your court as strata managers, as building managers, as committee members, to be trying to facilitate workers on the common property. The government tells us on this page that workers should minimise their time spent in any indoor common property areas and wear, of course, a face mask at all times. We also now have on the website confirmation that cleaning of common property in residential apartment buildings can continue. But we have to be mindful always about how many workers we have on the common property. As I said in my chat with Chris 2 weeks ago, in my view, on a plain reading of the health orders, that means you've got two workers on indoor common property at any one time, two workers inside a residential apartment at any one time. And if you are a resident, you cannot be in the same room as those workers. Five workers if we're talking about outdoor areas. So no real change since the last couple of weeks, just that extra wording on the government website. And I'm just checking, Rochelle has popped that link in. So I do encourage you all to go over and have a read of that. Our health orders are becoming increasingly complex. If you're in New South Wales and you're tuning into the press conferences each morning, and then maybe if you are even more interested in heading over and actually reading those health orders, they're getting really complex when it comes to construction work and construction workers. There is now a testing regime for construction workers, which is different if construction workers have had one dose of the vaccine and different again if they have had two doses. So do make sure that you are doing your own reading, getting your own guidance, and constantly checking on that government website, and also looking at the health orders themselves if you can make head or tail of them. We will put the current link, or the link to the current version of the health orders in the comments here. That takes you to that table that has all of the amendments over time. So make sure you're looking at the top of that list to get the most recent health orders. We do in New South Wales have more local government areas of concern that are subject to more restrictions. We now have, if I'm counting my list here, I think we might be up to 11 different local government areas of concern and some of these suburbs of Penrith. It's important for us in Strata to be across these areas because these are the areas where only authorized workers may leave to carry out work. Now, where this is impacting Strata and what I'm hearing from my colleagues in the sector is that cleaners are really struggling to be able to go to work to clean our residential apartment buildings in various parts of Sydney. Now, to answer a question that keeps coming up, cleaners for residential apartment buildings are not authorized workers. They are not on that list of authorized workers. The government has been clear. I understand Brad Hazard might have answered a direct question about this during a press conference last weekend. Cleaners of residential apartment buildings are not authorized workers. They shouldn't be leaving any of those local government areas of concern to carry out cleaning, putting huge pressure on our cleaning companies, on those who are servicing our apartments and trying to keep them as safe and as hygienic as possible at the moment. So no change to that as far as I'm aware. You guys are always very, very good at telling me what you've been hearing on the grapevine. And if there is anything new coming up or any expected changes, please do pop a comment in here and let everybody know. We will also pop the link to the current list of authorized workers here in the comments. I do get this question about whether cleaners are authorized workers because there is a mention that those who can attend to public areas, keeping public areas safe and clean are authorized workers. Our Strata buildings, our Strata common areas are not public areas. They are private residential spaces, and that's why cleaners for our residential apartment buildings are not able to go to work if they're from one of those LGAs of concern. Alrighty, so more hellos coming on through. Hey, Henry, saying hi. I hope you're staying safe. Yes, so far so good, Henry. Ailey, tuning in from LinkedIn. How you going, Ailey? Saying hi. Petra is here, and Matthew Larwood is here too, also tuning in through LinkedIn. Fantastic. So excited to see you all. I did say in my email today that we might have some time for some Strata Q&A. So if you do have some Strata questions, I do like to do a bit of a random show every now and then. If you have a particular Strata question, New South Wales is helpful for this New South Wales Strata lawyer. Pop them in the comments and I might come on over and answer some of your questions. If I don't get to them live, I do like to come back and happy to help out during this time when I know everyone is a little overworked, our Strata managers in particular, and there are some creative questions definitely coming into my inbox. Lots of interesting scenarios happening with electronic meetings, with more residents at home than ever before, and all the wide range of problems that we experience in Strata definitely getting a little bit wider. Okay, question already. That was quick, Richard. You are on the ball. Richard is asking, what are the rules regarding cleaning inside a resident's apartment? Thanks, Richard. Okay, so Richard, yes, a cleaner can go in and clean a resident's apartment. That apartment must be either unoccupied or the resident, if they're there, has to be in a different room. They have to be in a different room to the cleaner. So you want your cleaner to come and clean your apartment, lock yourself in the bedroom or the clean room that doesn't have to be tidied that day, and you'll be right. As long as there are no other workers, you can have one other worker because you can have two inside your residence. So as long as you've got two or less workers, cleaners coming into your apartment, then yes, you can have them cleaners on residential premises now. Good question. Thank you. Okay, David is asking, is it reasonable to require that tradespeople to our Strata plan are fully vaccinated? That is a very interesting question, David, and that digs into this complexity that has been added to our orders recently about construction work and the need for certain construction workers to be vaccinated. As I understand it, the government is not requiring full vaccinations for construction workers. If there is a vaccination due in a short period of time, then testing is enough, regular testing is enough, or if there is one vaccination, one dose, then regular testing is enough. Excuse me. But what I would encourage you to do is have a look at that link. I'm just scrolling up. There's a link there that Rochelle has put in the comments, cleaning and work directions. And there you will be able to read about the rules for construction work and be able to determine what the government's rules are. And then I would suggest in a strata context that if your committee is making rules, then those rules are reflective of what the government's saying. So if the government doesn't require workers to be fully vaccinated before they come on site, I think it may be unreasonable for a committee to require that that happen. Okay, so have a little think about that one. All right, I am going to head on over and welcome in our very special guest who is here today. I do see some other questions coming on through, and we will hope to get back to those ones. All right. Actually, before I welcome in my guest, I promised you that I'd tell you about something, and I haven't told you. I can't leave you hanging. There is another live online event that is happening next Tuesday evening, and I would love for you to be joining me. I am actually going to be talking all things Strata with Martin North. Now, Martin is the founder of Digital Finance Analytics. He is actually a banking sector analyst offering informed, objective, independent views on banking, financial services, and economic policy issues. But he has a special interest in the dynamics of the housing sector. So, enter Strata. I'm going to be chatting to Martin over on his YouTube channel, which has a massive 60,000 subscribers. That is happening live next Tuesday, the 17th of August at 7:30 p.m. And you are all more than welcome. I would love for you to tune in with me, chatting to Martin North. Rochelle is going to pop the link there in the comments. And I think that's the direct link to where Martin and I will be broadcasting from on his YouTube page. So save that one and head over and spend Tuesday evening, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Martin North and myself. I'll try and drop you a reminder about that too early next week. I have previously been a guest with Martin over on his podcast, Digital Finance Analytics. That was back earlier this year, where we picked apart how Strata works and the questions that people should be asking if they are considering Strata properties. So maybe some basic stuff for this crowd, but if that's something that you'd like to share with somebody new to Strata, we will share the link to that podcast chat with Martin North also. Rochelle's going to pop it in the notes here for you. Okay, I think that's my housekeeping. Time to get to the real show here. Welcoming in our special guest. He is indeed Ash Roy. After a corporate career in finance and strategy that spanned 15 years in large multinational corporations, a CPA and an MBA from the Australian Graduate School of Management, Ash founded Productive Insights in 2013. Productive Insights' passion is to partner with small business owners to help them grow sustainably and profitably using strategies that actually work. Now, Ash hosts his own successful podcast called the Productive Insights Podcast, and he has over 200 episodes under his belt. The podcast features some of the world's leading online entrepreneurs, including Seth Godin, Guy Kawasaki, Rand Fishkin, Neil Patel, Ryan Dice, Amy Porterfield, Sonia Simone, Noah Kagan, and many others. Ash has also himself been a guest on the Your Strata Property podcast. You can check out episode 146. Ash and I were talking about how to get the most out of your 2019 in Strata. It was one of our New Year episodes. From implementing systems to practice mindfulness, there is indeed a way to do less and achieve more. Now, I have personally benefited from Ash's guidance over the past 5-6 years. It was Ash who got me started podcasting back in 2016. And he is a big part of the reason why I have been able to stick to podcasting and why I enjoy it so much. Now, more recently, Ash has launched a membership program where he works with a close-knit community of business owners, helping them to get traction in their business. Welcome, Ash Roy.
Thank you for having me, Amanda. It's such a pleasure to be here. And thank you, everybody on this call, David, Zlato, Lucy, Pamela. It's wonderful to see all these faces, and it's so good to be back. And congratulations on your amazing success over the last 5 or 6 years. It's just an inspiration to watch you.
Thank you, Ash. I have to stop and count sometimes. It's sometimes it feels like 20 years and sometimes it feels like 3 weeks. So,
Amanda,
yes.
I remember coming to your place and installing the equipment in your house. That was you're the very first person for whom I launched a podcast, and we went through that whole strategy, and oh, it was so much fun. It's such a fond memory.
Yes, indeed. And as I said, Ash, it was your systems that you allowed me or enabled me to put in place, encouraged me to put in place processes. And when people come to me now and say, Amanda, how, as a busy professional, do you produce a podcast each week, do your live chat, run a membership, occasionally give some legal advice and do some legal work? And I say it is getting those systems, those procedures, the checklist, and sticking to it. And of course, I recommend getting help to do that from somebody who knows better than I do how to do it. And for me, that person was you. And I know that you have since then, you've helped so many business owners and a few people in the Strata sector as well. So I know that you're quite familiar with Strata and the craziness that surrounds us.
Thank you. Yeah, and I remember presenting at Macquarie Bank to a whole room of Strata managers. That was fun too, and we actually talked about systems in that conversation.
Now, I want to get into some of your fabulous tips that you have learned over many years of talking to some very successful, world leading entrepreneurs, I know, and that you put into practice with your own clients and inside your membership. I'm particularly thinking at the moment about our Strata managers who are all working from home. And yeah, we've all done that before, and we did it for a little while last year, but we were really glad to get back to the office. But I said we're running on nearly 2 months now of a strict lockdown, and in some areas more strict than others. What can our Strata managers be doing to improve their environment when they're working from home, their physical environment, and also this constant interaction with technology, with the digital? What kind of environmental design, if you like, things can we be doing as professionals at home during this tough time?
So I'd like to cover some overarching principles, and then maybe drop a couple of sort of, hopefully, what are nuggets, and then maybe we can dive deeper if you think something's useful. Excuse me, or if somebody posts a comment, I can see the comments here, and if someone wants me to drill in a bit further, I'm happy to do that. So
Awesome.
uh, the I'm a little bit of an anthropologist at heart, and I believe that we as humans are far more driven by our old brain, our lizard brain, than we would like to admit. And we are far more prone or susceptible to our environment than we would like to admit. So while we'd like to think that our frontal lobe, our prefrontal cortex, determines our behavior, uh, I believe that our behavior is determined more by the old brain. So, case in point, if you want to eat less rubbish, less chips, then don't have them in your pantry. The problem happens at the shopping center, not at your house. Don't bring them into your house, because once you bring them into your environment, into what you consider your safe territory, you are far more prone to, to avail yourself of that so-called, bad habit, if you like. So that's the first thing I want to say about environment. I think uh, it's a lot simpler than most people seem to think. As James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, said to me when I interviewed him on my podcast on episode 175, he said, if you want to watch less TV, have your lounge facing away from the TV, or maybe don't have a TV at all. So it's really not all that complicated. But I appreciate that there are a whole lot, it's a whole different ball game when you're a Strata manager, you're used to working in a physical office, and now suddenly you find yourself in a tiny corner of a room somewhere. If you're living in an apartment or maybe a house, you're locked up in you've turned one of your rooms into a study, and now you have to deal with all these other interruptions. And believe me, I know what it's like because I'm actually coming to you live from one of the bedrooms, which is my home office. And people keep walking in through that door and expect me to be available, and it drives me nuts. But this is where you start to create certain boundaries and you try and manage your environment. So if you have a spouse, if you have kids, you might say to them, listen, if the door is closed, it means that I am in a meeting and I cannot be disturbed. And as much as I wouldn't disturb you if you were in the operating theater doing a surgery, you can't disturb me while I'm doing a Facebook Live, for example. Uh, or you might have um, other boundaries in place. Maybe you want to put a do not disturb sign on the front, and obviously use those boundaries or those environmental cues um, with in moderation. So in other words, if you always have the door closed and you always make yourself unavailable, then people are going to get annoyed and they're going to try and get past it. So use it
Especially the kids.
sparingly. Exactly. So use it sparingly, and when don't make yourself available when you really need to be uncontactable. But at other times, you need to be a little bit flexible. Because the truth is, hey, look, a lot of us are homeschooling, our kids. So our children have needs too. So we need to kind of balance things. So that's one thing I would say: balance, boundaries. Um, Other things I would say in terms of managing your environment is uh, you might want to get dressed as if you were going to work. I find that goes a long
Mm.
way. I mean, since I left the corporate world, this is as dressed as I need to get, which is wonderful because I used to hate wearing ties and suits. I used to work as an analyst in corporate, but you know, whatever it is for you to feel like you are ready for work, that's probably a good idea. And then the other things I would say is make sure you're hydrated, make sure you take regular breaks. I often use the Pomodoro technique. In our membership, we do these 25-minute sprints with 5-minute breaks. That works really well. Um, these are some things you can do in terms of your physical environment. And then in terms of your digital environment, I would recommend considering make your phone, if you really want to go hardcore, make your phone grayscale. So remove the colors of your phone so it makes it
What
less
what
attractive.
is what? What is this?
Yeah.
Make it grayscale. There's a
Yeah. So
setting that takes the color off?
if you want to, you can. I don't remember how to do it. I did it once before. I learned this from a guy called Tristan Harris, who's written some great content about, he's an ex-Googler who's sort of, let's say, challenging the whole algorithm-driven economy. But that's a whole other conversation. But yes, you can turn your phone grayscale so it doesn't have the shiny, attractive colors, and it just looks as this bland piece of glass. And you're less likely to want to click it. You're less likely to get the dopamine hit from it. The
Cool.
other tip I got from James Clear was if you don't want to access your Facebook all the time, but you still want to have it on your phone, don't have it on your home screen. So I believe
Mm.
his home screen, the first screen has like something like one thing on it or two things on it. Or Steve Jobs had one book in his Kindle or whatever, iBooks, maybe he never used Kindle. And it was Autobiography of a Yogi, I think. And if you need access to those things like your Facebook or whatever other things that hijack your day, have them on the fourth or fifth screen
Yeah.
down. So
I have done that. I have actually
right.
done that.
So
Yeah.
you're increasing friction to access, which brings me to the other point. If you want to reduce a certain kind of activity, increase friction to access. If you want to promote or improve or, encourage a certain behavior, then reduce friction to access. Want to work out more regularly? Have your shoes sitting right outside, right next to your bed, and your workout clothes right at the foot of your bed, ready to go, and make it as easy as possible. Make it a rule for yourself that you get out of bed and put your damn shoes on, and maybe come back and have a shower after working out at the gym. Well, we don't go to the gym anymore, but you get what I'm saying.
And put the bottle of wine in the top cupboard, right at the back, lock
Right.
it, put the
Yep.
key in the garage.
Yep. Yep, exactly right. Just increase friction to access. You would be amazed at how much it uh, it discourages behaviors that you don't want to bring into your life. If your wine is, as you said, locked in the back of the top whatever shelf and the keys in the garage, it's a whole lot more painful for you to get up and go and get that wine, because it's like, oh, stuff it, I'll just go to bed, and that little thing means that you sleep better that night, and it means you wake up a little bit more fresh, and maybe you're less, fuzzy the next morning, and so on.
Yeah. I want to just call out one of the questions here in their Facebook comments. Bill and Ben is asking, has he read Kahneman? Have you read Kahneman, Ash, Nobel Prize winning psychologist?
Yeah. So I was actually taught by a dude called Dan Lavallo, who I believe wrote a book with him or did some work with him, and he thought he was God's gift to humanity. But he studied with, I think he worked with Daniel Kahneman, but I know he's written a book called Thinking Fast and Slow. I don't know if that's the one you're referring to, Bill, but no, I haven't read it yet. I don't have much time to read anymore, but I have heard there's a excellent subscription thing called Short Form, I think it's called, and that summarizes books. So I might check it out and see if it's on there.
You always know the next thing that's coming, Ash. I love it.
Yeah, I'm a geek.
I was just talking to Rochelle about my mic. I was noticing that I've had this mic since you set it up for me. And
As
I
have
have a
I.
couple of other mics. Yeah. And I have another mic. It's actually in my drawer, a new mic. And the reason it's in my drawer is because I don't know how to set it up. I tried and the plug, and it didn't. And I was welcoming you in. I thought, I've got to ask Ash about the mic.
Well, I'm not coming to Dubbo.
No, well, no, nobody wants to be going to Dubbo right now. I can tell you that. Now, Lucy is saying, don't bring the wine home. That is a good tip, Lucy.
Spot on.
That is, yep. She's a fast learner.
Nail on the head.
Well, thank you. I'm sure there are some tips in there for our Strata managers in particular who are struggling with the new environment that was only supposed to be temporary, but is hanging around for a little while. Now, I mentioned there in the intro, Ash, that one of your guests you've had on the podcast was Seth Godin. And I'm not sure how many of our viewers, listeners here, our Strata people may have come across Seth Godin, but he is certainly a person well known to those who are in the online space, online entrepreneurship, marketing in particular. He is a prolific author, blogger, writes a fabulous blog, writes every day, in fact. And if you haven't come across Seth, definitely Google him and get yourself on the list for his blog. And I know from one of your podcast episodes with Seth that he talked about how to dance with fear. And that stood out to me when I was looking through the show notes on your podcast episode. And I want to talk about that. What did he mean? What is it to dance with fear, and why should we be doing that?
So that came up as in response to a question I asked him, which was how do entrepreneurs, several of whom me included, deal with challenges around mindset and anxiety about whatever it is, showing up on video, putting out their offers, putting out their work into the world, and so on. How do you get rid of your fear? And he said, well, I haven't figured out how to get rid of fear, but I only know that you need to learn to work with it and sort of live with it, as it were. And then in typical Seth Godin fashion, he said, if you went to a running coach and said to the running coach, tell me how to get rid of the tired, this is very Sethism, how to get rid of the tired, then the coach is not going to be able to help you. The coach can tell you where to put the tired, but she can't tell you how to get rid of the tired. And the same goes with fear. And so then I said, oh, so you mean it's like, kind of like Aikido, like use the force of the other person to your advantage. Learn to use the fear to drive you rather than paralyze you. And he said, exactly. So if you're feeling anxiety about being live on video, excuse me, about being live on video, which I am feeling right now, then try and channel that anxiety into a slightly different form. Maybe use that anxiety to get that much more in the moment, and use the fear and harness the fear to bring yourself in the moment, pay full attention, and give yourself fully to delivering what you're delivering in a way that is meaningful and impactful to the audience.
You might tell me who said this, Ash, because I don't remember. It's certainly not me. That fear is just excitement without the breath.
Well, that's a beautiful line. I don't remember saying the without the breath part, but I do remember many years ago when I was on a soul searching mission. I remember uh, learning or reading that apparently some emotions go together, and fear and excitement is one of the two that goes in pairs.
Mm,
And apparently, then you have love and anger, and you have sadness and joy, and they're kind of like two
mm,
sides of the same coin. So, you can't feel joy without sadness, and vice versa. You can't feel fear without excitement. And yeah, if you think about it, there is this little edge of excitement that comes with fear, which is why we go on these crazy roller coaster rides and whatever else nutty things we do, right? Jump out of planes and whatever else we do.
mm. So if I think about strata meetings, and often I will be called in to go to a strata meeting because there is something controversial happening. There is conflict in the building. And these are tough meetings. We know that they're going to be tough before we walk in the door. The strata manager who might be chairing the meeting knows it's going to be tough. The owners all know it's going to be tough. And there's this tension in the room, and the strata managers tuning in will know this well. Everybody kind of walks in very tight and very quiet, perhaps, and everyone's got their virtual flak jackets on and ready for a fight. And you sense that real fear or stress or anxiety, or we don't know what's going to happen. Is this motion going to go through? Is this litigation going to commence? Why is this lawyer here? And who is she suing? And I know in myself there is that boundary between I'm excited to be there because I'm a bit of a strata nerd and it's what I like to do and I love going to meetings and I'm thinking this is going to be fun, but I'm also nervous and I'm also a little bit scared. Maybe there's a colleague there, another lawyer who's got a different point of view. Do I know what's going on? Have I been told everything? Am I across the law? And I have definitely over the years had to train myself to slow down, to take a breath, to breathe, and to recognize that this is the place that I want to be. I'm excited to be here. This is what I'm good at, and know through experience that over time, maybe it'll take 10 minutes, maybe it'll take an hour. Everybody kind of calms down and relaxes and starts to communicate better and get into the swing of things. And I'm translating that to online meetings. You're talking about being nervous on video and people just generally having to learn that new mode. I'm sure that's happening for our strata managers going into these high conflict meetings, taking all of that tension that we have in those kinds of meetings and having to deal with it through a medium that they're uncomfortable with and don't feel confident asserting themselves. So having me just given you that stream of consciousness, is there anything in there jumping out for you for our strata managers conducting meetings when they might be feeling a bit nervous and a bit scared?
Well, I think you touched on it when you mentioned the breath earlier on. So I've been practicing mindfulness on and off, unfortunately, more off than on, I think, but for the last 10 odd years. And the breath is a very interesting tool. It actually is the only thing that I'm aware of that is in our being that reminds us how evanescent everything is and the impermanence of things, which underpins a lot of anxiety um, reduction, in my view. So it's a Buddhist principle, but and I'm not preaching Buddhism here. I'm agnostic and I have no religious affiliations at all. But uh, if you understand that everything is impermanent, and I mean everything is impermanent, and all events and beings arise from what is called codependent arising. No particular event or being is because of one single cause that I'm aware of. That kind of reduces the tendency for us to go into the whole lizard brain, black and white, me versus you kind of thinking. And we start to appreciate things as they really are, which is multifactorial and transient. So if you have that kind of backdrop, that is an intellectual sort of attitude. But if you drop into your breath and become aware of your breath, you'll notice that your breath follows a similar pattern. It's evanescent. It's not permanent. It's constantly changing, and that's the only constant we have. The other thing that the breath does is it disengages you from your brain. And as post-industrial age, we've become obsessed with our brains, and we think we're a lot smarter than we actually are. The truth is, as human beings, I don't think we're all that smart. Otherwise, our planet wouldn't be in the state it is in today. Sorry to get a bit political about this, but that's my view. So the point is, there's a lot to be said for dropping into your bodily wisdom and being aware of your body and not being stuck in here all the time. I'm not saying don't use your brain. I'm saying be aware of your whole being. And then as an extension to that, you can use a mindful approach, which, by the way, in my opinion, is sort of anchored in the breath, no puns intended. By using your breath as an anchor, you can be aware of your environment and yourself in that environment. So you're not just focused on me, or you. It's more like, how am I showing up in this general environment? And how am I, I noticed that there is a feeling of anxiety arising, and you almost think of yourself in the third person. And that allows you to have this detachment from yourself and what is going on. And you can start to become aware of patterns. I talked about this at length with Amy Porterfield in episode 145. And if our listeners want to listen, they can just go to productiveinsights.com/145. There is a video there. Amy and I were supposed to talk about course creation, but the day before, she had dropped an episode about her anxieties about being on video, because she was worried about her weight. I don't know why, but she was worried about it.
No,
I think she looks amazing, but and I was worried about being a baldy and about the amount of weight I've put on. So we talked about our anxieties about being on video. And this is one of the things we talked about, mindfulness, being aware of your breath, and so on. So does that help?
It does, absolutely. And I'm going to head over into our comments soon. I can see a few there coming in. You just triggered something there for me, Ash. I have said in the past to young professionals in my office, whether they're students or young lawyers, who are very nervous about doing something, whether it's going to a Strata meeting or going to court. And I say to them, what's the worst thing that could happen? Oh, well, the judge could laugh at me or kick me out, or I get the law wrong. And I said, no, the worst thing that can happen, speaking of impermanence, is you could die. You could die. Are you going to die when you go to court? Well, no, I hope not. Unless I get hit by a bus. Then you're going to be fine. It's everything else is little compared to that. So for our Strata managers out there, and I still tell that to myself when I'm thinking, Amanda, are you going to die? Has anybody died? No, we're all good. It's okay. Whatever's gone wrong, it's okay. We can get past that.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, I didn't realize how much of a luxury that mental stance is until I got married to a surgeon, because when they go to work, somebody does die if they screw up. True. And it's not even them, it's somebody else. They've got other people's lives in their hands. So
yeah, I'm not including.
We're very lucky.
I'm not talking. Exactly. We're not doing surgery here as lawyers.
No, we're very lucky to be. We are so lucky to be in a position where our work doesn't have such dire consequences. So, hey, you know what? Have a little bit of fun with it. And what's the worst that's going to happen? Maybe you look like a fool. Okay. Maybe I'm going to look like a fool at the end of this life, but I'm just doing the best I can.
Absolutely. And you're helping so many people. I can see the comments here. Bill and Ben's just adding back to the comment about Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow is very good, a very good book. An Epiphany, some might say, and Noise, co-authored, is equally interesting. So some good suggestions there from Bill and Ben. Elizabeth, hey, Elizabeth, haven't said hello. It's a communication skill, Strata manager and committee. I'm just going to bring your next comment up, Elizabeth. I think this is a follow-on. Need to learn that skill like other businesses do. There's a lot at stake, and they owe it to the owners to bring a high level of communication. So true. And Elizabeth and I have spoken about this on the podcast, that art of communication. And it can be forgotten in Strata. You're so down in the weeds of just getting the minutes out and getting the levy notices out, and forgetting that you're in a service business. You do need to sell. You do need to market. You do need to provide that high level of service to your client. And the way that you communicate, especially now when we're talking about communicating on video and not being there in person. It's just so important to get that right and to be as comfortable as you can with that, I think.
Yeah, totally.
And Bill and Ben's just adding in, I'm liking the philosophical depth, a little more cerebral than a chat with Jimmy.
Who's Jimmy?
Well, excuse me. Jimmy's one of our past live guests, and Jimmy is a journalist and author and comedian, I might add. And Bill and Ben, I like to bring you all types here on Friday Live and on the podcast. That's what Fridays are all about. We'll get Jimmy in maybe when we're all let out and we can all be celebrating and feeling a little less cerebral. But that is a compliment, big compliment there for you, Ash.
Thank you. I want to check out Jimmy. This guy sounds like fun.
All right. Now, I have spoken about frogs in the lead up, or I've teased a line about frogs in the lead up to this chat, Ash. And I know, again, this is something that you discussed with one of your recent guests on your podcast. What do frogs have to do with goal setting and time management?
So this was said by someone called Brian Tracy, and I think you've been living under a rock if you haven't heard of him, because he's been around for like 50 years. He's written about 90 books, and I sort of fell off my chair almost when he reached out to me and asked to be a guest on my podcast. Anyway, we talked about frogs, and I asked him that question: what does frogs have to do with? How did you come up with "Eat That Frog," which is one of his books? And this is what he said to me. So I've got it here on my iPad. So apparently Mark Twain once said, this is what Brian told me. I don't know that Mark Twain did say it, but I'm sure he did. Mark Twain once said that if the first thing you do each morning is to eat a live frog, you can go through the day with the satisfaction of knowing that it's probably the worst thing that is going to happen to you all day long. And apparently he has 2 recommendations about eating frogs. If you have to eat 2 frogs, eat the uglier one first. And if you have to eat a live frog, it doesn't pay to sit and look at it for very long. The frog, of course, being a metaphor for the big, hairy, ugly task you don't want to do. So
yes.
That essentially is what frogs have to do with productivity.
And don't we have plenty of those big, hairy, ugly tasks on our plate when we're working and even living in Strata, especially as committee members dealing at the moment with disgruntled, tired, fed up residents. I know for me, my tasks that I'd rather not do, because I am the type of person who likes to manage my own day, be in my own space, be a bit introverted and just put my head down and work. I hate making phone calls. I know that sometimes I have to pick up the phone to talk to a colleague, a lawyer on the other side, even a client. Sometimes I have to get some instructions from. Sometimes I just have to ring up my dentist and make an appointment. And I hate picking up my phone and making that phone call. So I have, having heard this before, that you should be doing the hardest task, the task you don't want to do first thing in the morning. I have tried to set aside that first 15 minutes of the day. That's the day for making phone calls. And sometimes it is only 15 minutes because people don't answer the phone. I go, great, done my bit, left my message, call me back.
That's it. And I just want to say a couple of things about that. First of all, I know that there isn't always just one task. I get it. There's sometimes lots of these ugly tasks, but ultimately we all have just one brain, as far as I know, and we need to then prioritize them. So this is something I wanted to touch on earlier on. Mindfulness is very important in productivity because it helps you to be better at task selection. So what I mean by that is, this whole concept of time management is a hangover from Frederick Taylor, who came up with this whole time and motion studies back when we were in industrialized economy, whenever, the 1900s or 1800s or whatever. Since then, things have moved on. Most of us are knowledge workers, definitely the people on this call are. And it's not about getting more done in less time for us. It's about doing the right things in the right sequence and actually not doing some things at all, but rather delegating those things. And this is where building systems and standard operating procedures, et cetera, come into play. And this is where, if we had more time, we could talk about important versus urgent stuff, where, often the important stuff shows up not as urgent on your workflow, and the urgent stuff is often not important. So, constantly reacting to phone calls and answering phone calls and those sorts of stuff is a reactive kind of behavior. Creating systems that minimize the influx of those phone calls is a more proactive behavior, and actually can then offset a lot of the quadrant 3 important not urgent stuff. So you don't end up in a quadrant 1 situation, which is important and urgent, i.e. my business is about to fall apart or the building's about to burn down because the strata manager forgot to, I don't know, get a fire inspection done or whatever it is. So important not urgent is where you want to live, but if you want to be able to do that consistently, then you need to have some kind of a mindfulness practice where you are in a proactive mental state, you're anchored in the breath, and you're making better decisions about what to do and what sequence to do it in, and what not to do, which is as important, if not more important, and rather delegate those things.
Sorry, I've just lost my train of thought because I had one of those door opening interruptions happening.
Sorry.
Yes, it is often the case. I think I've heard this somewhere as well, that it's often the case that the most important thing that you should be doing today or this week is not even on your list. It's not even
Exactly.
in your
Spot on.
Biosphere, in your head at all. And that's scary, and then you do end up in that urgent situation. Oh crap, I should have done that. I should have had a system in place for that. I should have had a fallback. I should have dealt with that back then. And I think if you can, I really like that, Ash, that it's mindfulness that can get us to that place of finding out what we don't know.
Yes.
Recognizing that there must be something. There's something here that needs to be on my list and it's not here. What is it? And being able to practice mindfulness to get there, hopefully.
Here's some other quick tips that will help you to find out what you don't know. You're right. A lot of the times we don't know what we don't know, in the sense that it's not in our conscious mind. But I go analog all the time. I write down my thoughts. I'm doing that right now as we're speaking. When ideas come up, I have this thing where I have these little cards. I physically put them on my desk. I have this thing that Seth sent me, the book, The Practice. I read books in hard copy. I have this deck of cards that he sent me, which goes with the book. And it's basically just got these little things on each card, and it reminds you of certain things. So I just fiddle around with these things through the day. These are all little cues to keep me focused on, doing more of the practice, because a lot of your insights and aha moments don't happen in here. They happen out there between you and the world by physically taking action. Action leads to insights, not necessarily the other way around.
Excellent. And I might get some links there from you, Ash, for how our viewers might be able to access some of those resources that you've got there, if Seth has
Sure.
those publicly available. Just heading back over into the comments, John has very helpfully posted some instructions on grayscale.
Thank you, John.
Thank you,
I was going to bring that up. Thank you, John.
Nice one. Thank you. So that's there in the comments for anyone wanting to go back and see how to take the bright, shiny colors, distracting colors off their iPhone. I might have a look at that one. Lucy is saying communication is hard with difficult residents who think they're always right, always looking for trouble. Strata committees are angels, I think, maybe, Lucy, trying to deal with these horrible residents. Yes, sad, but sometimes true, Lucy. So you're getting a thank you here, John, from somebody who's on LinkedIn. I can't see their name through our program that we're using here.
That was actually me. John. I'm the LinkedIn user that said thank you, John.
Oh, there you go. Awesome. Excellent. And Bruce is criticizing your geography, Ash. Looks like Ash thinks you're in Dubbo, Amanda, but you're 100 kilometers away.
Oops, I'm sorry.
I'm getting outed. I am so outed here today. No, my lovely followers here know that I am in my mudgy home.
Mudgy, sorry.
That's okay. That's all right. So far have escaped lockdown, but I tell you what, the cards are falling down all around us here. We're all waiting to be told that it's time to stay home. Not that there's too much going on here, I can tell you that. Alrighty, perfect. Now we are soon going to be out of time, but Ash, I do want to get to our last topic that I want to make sure we cover, because we have a lot of leaders here in our Strata space, and especially the kind of people who tune in to Friday Live and listen to the podcast. They are our chairpersons, they are our secretaries, those who are highly engaged in their communities, our strata managers. And now more than ever, they are having to make difficult decisions. They're having to make decisions that impact their community in ways that nobody wants to be impacted. It brings out those difficult residents that Lucy is talking about. I know from your podcast, you've talked to guests before about leadership, and in particular, how do you be a responsible leader and not a demanding, ego-centric tyrant?
So I spoke to Guy Kawasaki about his work with Steve Jobs, and I can tell you it wasn't easy working with Steve Jobs. But my view on leadership is I'd like to say two things about it. One, something that my wife, who is an incredible inspiration to me and in a lot of ways is my mentor, said to me that you can be a professional in your as a cleaner or a crash collector or whatever, and you can be really awful as a surgeon. I mean, not, I would hope that there aren't any awful, as in not an incredibly professional surgeon. Let's put it that way. The point is, being a professional is not a designation; it's an attitude, and I feel that applies to leadership too. So you can either behave in ways that represent or show leadership, or you can behave in ways that don't personify or embody leadership. You don't have to be a leader to be doing that. That's the first thing. And the second thing I want to say about it is, I remember a friend of mine, Barry Moore. I don't know, maybe he got it from, he's an ex-combat pilot. Maybe this is what he learned in the Air Force or whatever. But he shared this meme on Facebook once where he had this pack of wolves, and apparently it was circled in the back of the pack were the two wolves that were the leaders of the pack. And in the middle were the older wolves. And apparently at the front were the younger ones that were sort of keeping the pace or, keeping the pace for the group. But the idea of having the leaders at the back of the pack was to protect the older wolves from attacks and so on, and to kind of shore up the pack. And the younger ones who were, full of whatever testosterone or whatever they're full of, I don't know, were pushing the pack, keeping the pace. So we have this concept of leadership as being leading out from the front. But as we've seen with certain political leaders, and I won't mention names, you can be a leader and be a complete loser. And you can be someone who is not visibly a leader, or not in the position of a leader, but needs to be a leader. Take someone who's parenting children, for example. That's probably one of the most important things our society needs, but we don't recognize them as leaders. But truth is, they decide the fate of our society, the future of our society.
Mm. So recognizing and being aware of, I think, in our in our strata communities, those quiet people who are there doing the work in the background. There's so many of them now. I know at home, making sure that the rubbish gets collected, that the bin rooms are clean and tidy. I'm seeing it in my own building in Sydney, the beautiful committee member residents who are there and just slogging along. If there's a leak that's happening, making sure the plumber gets out there, staying up to date on the public health orders. And they're not always the ones who are recognized or acknowledged. They're often the ones who are getting beaten up by the difficult residents. And our strata managers and health workers. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that is a leadership kind of behavior. And those same people, in my view, can be leaders in one moment and not be leaders in another, depending on how they're behaving.
Yep, definitely. And our strata managers with their assistants, strata manager assistants are angels, I think, and often the heroes in our strata management offices, taking the calls, dealing with the upset residents and just getting the job done and showing those leadership qualities. You mentioned there, Ash, about professionalism and leadership perhaps being a state of mind. That's really timely for us at the moment in New South Wales, where our strata managers have just become part of a professional standards scheme. And I was talking to Chris Duggan about that 2 weeks ago, and there's a lot of education to be done, increased CPD requirements, different systems that have to be put in place to make sure our strata managers can call themselves professionals. But simply making that mindset shift and that attitude shift towards professionalism, it's important to understand how key that component is. So thank you very much for sharing that. A few more comments coming in, and we are very shortly going to have to wrap up so I can send you off to your Friday evening, quiet Friday evenings for those in Sydney and lockdown areas. Comments here from Elizabeth. Many owners are too scared to speak up for fear of being disparaged or called names in a public forum. Yes, very good point there, Elizabeth. And perhaps showing leadership, our committee members showing leadership by setting that standard and saying that those kinds of things, name calling, are definitely not on. Lucy says, well said, Ash, about leaders.
Thank you.
Excellent. And I'm just scrolling back up to see Debbie's comment. Debbie's in Dubbo. Hey, Debbie. Good to see you. It's okay. I'm in Dubbo. I hope you're okay, Debbie. Fantastic. So we come from far and wide, Ash. That is for sure. All right. Well, thank you very much, Ash Roy of Productive Insights, for joining us here today.
Thank you for
as
having
we've
me.
mentioned, Ash has a fabulous podcast, and we're going to pop a link in the comments here. Definitely go and subscribe to Ash's podcast. It was one of the very first podcasts back in probably 2015 that I ever listened to, and how I got to know Ash. So that's a great place to find out more if you've liked what you're hearing today. And also check out Ash's membership community for business owners wanting to implement a lot of these strategies at a deeper level that Ash is talking about. We've got a link there too to find out more about that. All right, Ash Roy, what are you up to tonight?
Just hanging out with the fam, watching a bit of telly, and then getting back to work.
Getting back to work. Oh my goodness.
I love what I do, so it doesn't feel like work for me. It's all play.
I kind of know that feeling. I do a regular family FaceTime chat with my family in Sydney on Friday nights, which my dad called recently. It's our second happy hour, because I know that he tunes in often here for Friday Live, which we sometimes call happy hour, and then we do another happy hour at 6 o'clock with the family, which is lots of fun.
Nice.
So that's what I'm up to.
Cool.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we will catch you back here live in 2 weeks' time. In the meantime, stay safe, look after each other, look after your neighbours, your strata managers. Try to be one of those responsible leaders and grateful residents, and enjoy your weekends as best you can.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
Bye.